Hello, my name is Preston Smith, and these are excerpts from Ronald Reagan's Evil Empire speech. From the joy and the good feeling of this conference, I go to a political reception. Now, I don't know why, but that bit of scheduling reminds me of a story, which I'll share with you. An evangelical minister and a politician arrived at Heaven's Gate one day together, and St. Peter, after doing all the necessary formalities, took them in hand to show them where their quarters would be. And he took them to a small, single room with a bed, a chair, and a table, and said this was for the clergyman. And the politician was a little worried about what might be in store for him. And he couldn't believe it when St. Peter stopped in front of a beautiful mansion with lovely grounds, many servants, and told him that these would be his quarters. He couldn't help but ask, he said, "But wait, there's something wrong. How do I get this mansion while that good and holy man only gets a single room?" And St. Peter said, You have to understand how things are up here. We've got thousands and thousands of clergy. You're the first politician that ever made it. But I don't want to contribute to a stereotype. So I tell you that there are a great many God-fearing, dedicated, noble men and women in public life, present company included. And yes, we need your help to keep us ever mindful of the ideas and the principles that brought us into the public arena in the first place. The basis of those ideals and principles is a commitment to freedom and personal liberty that itself is grounded in the much deeper realization that freedom prospers only where the blessings of God are avidly sought and humbly accepted. The American experiment in democracy rests on this insight. Its discovery was a great triumph of our founding fathers, voiced by William Penn when he said, quote, "If we will not be governed by God, we must be governed by tyrants." Explaining the inalienable rights of man, Jefferson said, quote, "The God who gave us life gave us liberty at the same time." And it was George Washington who said that, quote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." And finally, that shrewdest of all observers of American democracy, Alexis de Tocqueville, put it eloquently after he'd gone on a search for the secret of America's greatness and genius. And he said, "Not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I understand the greatness and genius of America. America is good, and if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great." Well, I'm pleased to be here today with you who are keeping America great by keeping her good. Only through your work and prayers and those of millions of others can we hope to survive this perilous century and keep alive this experiment. In liberty, this last best hope of man. I want you to know that this administration is motivated by a political philosophy that sees the greatness of America in you, her people, and in your families, churches, neighborhoods, communities, the institutions that foster and nourish values for the rule of law under God. Now, I don't have to tell you that this puts us in opposition to, or at least out of step with, a prevailing attitude of many who have turned to a modern-day secularism, discarding the tried and tested values upon which our very civilization is based. No matter how well-intentioned, their value system is radically different from that of most Americans. While they proclaim that they're freeing us from superstitions of the past, they've taken upon themselves the job of superintending us by government, rule, and regulation. Sometimes their voices are louder than ours, but they are not yet a majority. The fight against parental notification is really one example of many attempts to water down traditional values and even abrogate the original terms of American democracy. Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. When our founding fathers passed the First Amendment, they sought to protect churches from government interference. They never intended to construct a wall of hostility between government and the concept of religious belief itself. The evidence of this permeates our history and our government. The Declaration of Independence mentioned the Supreme Being no less than 4 times. "In God we trust" is engraved on our coinage. The Supreme Court opens its proceedings with a religious invocation, and the members of Congress open their sessions with a prayer. I just happen to believe the school children of the United States are entitled to the same privileges as Supreme Court justices and congressmen. Last year, I sent the Congress constitutional amendment to restore prayer to public schools. Already this session, there's growing bipartisan support for the amendment, and I'm calling on the Congress to act speedily to pass it and let our children pray. Perhaps some of you read recently about the Lubbock school case, where a judge actually ruled that it was unconstitutional for a school district to give equal treatment to religious and non-religious student groups, even when the group meetings were being held during the students' own time. The First Amendment never intended to require government to discriminate against religious speech. Senators Denton and Hatfield have proposed legislation in the Congress on the whole question of prohibiting discrimination against religious forms of student speech. Such legislation could go far to restore freedom of religious speech for public school students, and I hope the Congress considers these bills quickly. And with your help, I think it's possible. We could also get the constitutional amendment through the Congress this year. More than a decade ago, a Supreme Court decision literally wiped off the books of 50 states statutes protecting the rights of unborn children. Abortion on demand now takes the lives of up to 1.5 million unborn children a year. Human life legislation ending this tragedy will someday pass the Congress, and you and I must never rest until it does. Unless and until it can be proven that the unborn child is not a living entity, then its rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness must be protected. You may remember that when abortion on demand began, many, and indeed, I'm sure many of you, warned that the practice would lead to a decline in respect for human life, that the philosophical premises used to justify abortion on demand would ultimately be used to justify other attacks on the sacredness of human life, infanticide, or mercy killing. Tragically enough, those warnings proved all too true. Only last year, a court permitted the death by starvation of a handicapped infant. I've directed the Health and Human Services Department to make clear to every healthcare facility in the United States that the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 protects all handicapped persons against discrimination based on handicaps, including infants. And we've taken the further step of requiring that each and every recipient of federal funds who provides healthcare services to infants must post and keep posted in a conspicuous place a notice stating that, quote, discriminatory failure to feed and care for handicapped infants in this facility is prohibited by federal law, end quote. Also lists a 24-hour toll-free number so that nurses and others may report violations in time to save the infant's life. In addition, recent legislation introduced in Congress by Representative Henry Hyde of Illinois not only increases restrictions on publicly financed abortions, also addresses this whole problem of infanticide. I urge the Congress to begin hearings and to adopt legislation that will protect the right of life to all children, including the disabled or handicapped. And I'm sure that you must get discouraged at times, but you've done better than you know, perhaps. There's a great spiritual awakening in America, a renewal of the traditional values that have been the bedrock of America's goodness and greatness. One recent survey by a Washington-based research council concluded that Americans were far more religious than the people of other nations. 95% of those surveyed expressed a belief in God, and a huge majority believed the Ten Commandments had a real meaning in their lives. Another studies found that an overwhelming majority of Americans disapprove of adultery, teenage sex, pornography, abortion, and hard drugs. And this same study showed a deep reverence for the importance of family ties and religious belief. I think the items that we've discussed here today must be a key part of the nation's political agenda. For the first time, the Congress is openly and seriously debating and dealing with the prayer and abortion issues. And that is enormous progress right there. I repeat, America is in the midst of a spiritual awakening and a moral renewal. And with your biblical keynote, I say today, yes, let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. I believe we shall rise to the challenge. I believe that communism is another sad, bizarre chapter in human history whose last pages even now are being written, like many of the other problems that we have faced. I believe this because the source of our strength in the quest for human freedom is not material but spiritual, and because it knows no limitation. It must terrify and ultimately triumph over those who would enslave their fellow man. For in the words of Isaiah, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increased strength. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. Yes, change your world. One of our founding fathers, Thomas Paine, said, quote, "We have it within our power to begin the world over again. We can do it, doing together what no church could do by itself." God bless you, and thank you very much.